record. So hi everybody, I'm Dr. Kogan. I'm a medical director of Center for Integrative Medicine, associate professor of medicine at GW, and today we're going to talk about acidic cannabinoids. This will be a recorded session. I will be not taking questions during the talk, so please put the questions in the chat box, and we'll handle the questions after. We're going to start the slideshow. Let's see. Okay. I hope that you guys can see my slides. Can somebody let me know if you can see the slides? Okay, well, I'm presuming that slides are, that you can see the slides, so I'm going to proceed. So we're going to talk about particular two molecules today, CBDA and CBGA. So this is the acidic forms of CBD and CBG. I will be putting them in the context of the entire endocannabinoid system. And all right, and let's get going. So a couple of disclosures. I do collect royalties from the book. And of course, I also co-own the practice, and there's income there. So what are we going to talk today about? So we're going to talk about particularities of acidic cannabinoids. We're going to talk a little bit about basic science of what we know. We're going to talk about clinical applications. We're going to talk about detailed clinical applications. We're also going to cover why I think acidic forms are up and coming, and one of the biggest topics in the world of cannabis. We're also going to talk about particular concerns about CBDA and CBGA, although to be honest with you, there are very few. And we will cover what we currently know about CBDA and CBGA as COVID prevention. We're also going to talk about the study that Dr. Benavides and I recently concluded, and it's just submitted for publication. We're going to talk about practicalities, how you can get those. I will show you sort of the companies that I believe are reasonable, and also how you can get discount. And also we're going to talk a little bit about how you can learn more. So what are the acidic cannabinoids? Well, there are really primarily three forms, although there are actually more than this three, but these are the three large ones. So the acidic forms are the forms that are present in a raw cannabis. Now, they all have particular functions. We'll go into the two. The reason we're not going into THCA, tetrahydrocannabinolic acid, it's because it's actually not something that's that easy to find on a hemp market. You have to get those from dispensaries. And also, it's actually not necessarily the efficacy of THCA can be reproduced by other molecules. And so I think given that you have to get them from dispensaries, and also from the fact that you actually have to, and it's relatively unstable, we're not going to discuss it today. So we're going to just talk about CBDA and CBGA. So let's talk about what these molecules are and how they're made. So this is the entire diagram of the most common cannabinoids. Now, this is only a tiny fractions of total cannabinoids. There are upwards of over 100 minor cannabinoids that we are aware of, but this ones that are more known and more understood. So the CBGA, which we will be talking a lot today about, is often considered as a kind of a key starting molecule. So in the raw hemp or cannabis, it's the beginning molecule. And then inside the hemp, CBGA is converted, so to speak, to the THCA, CBDA, and CBCA. So these are all acidic forms. Now, when you try to heat it, or when you try to extract these molecules or into the process that's often described as decarboxylation, we remove the acidic molecules and then we turn this into the molecules that many of you are familiar, for example, CBD or the THC, which is what we obtain from the dispensaries. okay? Now, notice that neither CBGA, THCA, CBDA, or CBCA have any particular psychoactive or psychotoxic functions. So they're all safe from perspective. You're not going to get high no matter how much of it you take. And also, generally speaking, they're not going to get converted without some special form into the active THC. So you don't have to worry about, when you're taking these molecules, you don't have to worry about getting high. One really important caveat is if you're in a government position and you are obtaining any products from hemp, unfortunately, there is a small chance that small percentage of THC that's present in the hemp products will turn your drug test positive, and hence you may be in trouble if you're working for federal government. If you're not working for federal government, you're working for a private employee, as a contractor, as an employee, that shouldn't really be a problem, because in reality, if you have been using any hemp-derived products, or you're using THC with medical cannabis card, you shouldn't be violating any policies. And the actual company is not allowed to make a policies prohibitive over the state laws if you live in one of the states that allows you to use medical cannabis. I do want to point out here that aged cannabinoids degrade into a variety of different molecules. Two interesting ones here is the CBN, which we increasingly use for sleep. That's topic of different discussion. And then delta 8 THC, which is now all the hype, because delta 8 THC does have some psychoactive or psychotoxic effects, and it's actually sold on the free market as a hemp extract. And there are some concerns about this product, but we're not going to talk about that either today. Okay, so let's go right into the starting with CBDA. So what do we know about CBDA? Well, it's a very potent molecule. It's a very potent anti-inflammatory. It works at the several targets. So the COX-2 target, which is a similar target to where all the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, such as, for example, Motrin, Celebrex, and many others work. It also appears to be that there's other functions, TRPA1 and TRPV1 agonists, and actually a whole lot more actions. But in terms of what's really essential is that remembering this COX-2 inhibition, and the main reason is because it becomes a wonderful alternative to the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. Now, do notice that CBD does not have the same effect. So hence is really big difference between CBD, cannabidiol, and CBDA, cannabidiolic acid. CBD has a lot of targets. The COX-2 is not one of the more common ones. Partially because of that, partially just because that's how it's structured, there is really almost no interaction, liver interactions with cytochrome P450. And that's really important because there's no expected drug to the CBDA. For that matter, by the way, also CBGA expected interactions. And in my experience, and I think the small amount of research supports that, it appears that CBDA is best for arthritic pain. Any kind of arthritis, whether it's a rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis of any kind, or any inflammatory pain, whether it's being a joint pain, muscle pain, or any other inflammation related to any kind of cause, whether it's an overuse syndrome, autoimmune condition, or anything else, okay? There seem to be also pretty potent neuroprotective effects as well as some anti-nausea property, but there's also really fascinating data on possible anti-cancer effects, and we don't really have enough clinical data, so notice I did not type that up because I think it's premature to say that there is enough data to start putting that into clinical application. Okay, so let's move on. So practical aspects. Well, you can get it in a variety of forms. Something that's quite different from other cannabinoids, all acidic forms are much more soluble in water. Why is that important? Well, because the it means that absorption of acidic forms will be a lot better. In order for us to absorb CBD, THC, and other non-acidic forms, we have to put it in oil, and we have to try not to swallow it, because the moment we swallow it, it means absorption of these molecules will be down. Not as much with acidic forms. Acidic forms will get absorbed no matter how you take them in, pretty much. And the difference between bioavailability after you apply the CBDA or CBGA is probably not going to be as large as with, let's say, CBD. It's important because it means that you're not going to lose a lot of material. A lot of people don't realize that, but they would swallow CBD, and CBD, after it's swallowed, the average absorption is only 5, at best 10%, maybe up to 15 in certain circumstances, which means that if you paid for 100 milligrams, you're only going to get 15 out of it in reality. With acidic forms, the absorption seems to be a lot better. Now, the mantra for the use of all cannabinoids is use the minimum effective dose. It applies the same to CBDA. It applies to CBGA. The second mantra is put it where you want to put it, where it needs to go. So if you have an arthritic joint, put it right on a joint, put it topically. Now, if you have a systemic problem, you'll have to take it in. You have to swallow it, or maybe use it sublingually. Okay, so the dose is very important. So those of you who are taking CBD probably know that you have to take upwards of 100, 200, or even more milligrams. With CBDA, the beginning effective dose is about 10 times less, meaning that you can probably start taking about 10 to 20 milligrams a day, and then we do titrate the dose up. We often do need to titrate dose upwards of closer to 100 milligrams, but only for cases when pain is severe or when inflammation is severe. So this is a pretty important point. Okay, so a couple of brands that I like to use. This is first one. So this is called planetary.com. If you forget the actual links, don't worry. I'll have them again into the last slide, and also I will post all of the links in the YouTube video. You have this code that you can use to get 25% discounts on everything on this website. And this is only CBDA. So this company only makes the CBDA, and they do make it in a variety of forms. So let's see if I'm gonna actually, let me try to see what happens if I just show you actual website, so you can see difference of products. So they do have them in capsules. So this is, for example, one option where it's 25 milligrams per capsule. So if you take, say, 2 capsules a day, you will be getting a 50 milligrams, which for a lot of medical conditions will be a target dose. They do have them in topical forms, which I tend to use a lot of topical cannabinoids at home for the entire family, kids and pets. So this one is 1,000 milligrams in 2 ounces jar. You know, and so these are the prices. You will get 25% off of this price. If you're subscribed, you get additional 10%. And then I think I also want to show you sublingual form. So they have them in different tastes. The infusion would be the one that you would want to use. This is their most potent formula. So this is 1,500 milligrams. It means that each dropper will have 50 milligrams. It's also in a way, the cheapest form to get the CBDA in. Again, remember I said that the possible effective dose can be as low as 20 milligrams a day. So you potentially can have this last for more than 2 months. Okay, let's go back to the slides. Okay. So CBGA, cannabigerolic acid. So this is the newest kid on the block. One of the main reasons I decided to do this presentation today is that I've just started using formally this in the clinic only a few weeks ago. So until recently, the CBGA was not available. It's a very new product. What's very interesting about this product that it has a couple of really important traits. It's one of the few cannabinoids that has a very clear immune boosting properties. but also strong cardioprotective and neuroprotective. So one of my main interests for the CBGA is going to be cognitive health, specifically in the use of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. I will hold off of telling you more why. We don't have clinical data on that just yet. There is some signals in small animal models and mice models, but it's too prematurely to say what we're going to see. I think the experience will be gained here pretty quickly. Okay. Similar to CBDA, CBGA compared to the CBG, to the cannabidiol, is way more better absorbed. So again, we've already discussed this, but I want to repeat several points multiple times so that you remember them. And by the way, what you're seeing at the bottom of each slide is an actual reference. So this is, I'm trying to show you some of the links in case you're interested in the future and you want to go to the original publication that I use preparing for each presentation. This is usually how I organize all my talks. So some of the practical aspects. So there is basically, in my opinion, literally just maybe a half a dozen companies right now in the market that's starting to put this out that are respectful companies. I'm sure that in upcoming months, we're going to see explosion of CBGA, and you'll see in a second why that is the case. Starting dose is very similar to the CBDA, somewhere between 5 to 10 milligrams twice a day. So basically 10 to 20 milligrams a day. And then the clinical effect supposedly being seen in 25 to 50 milligrams. As I just said, since I just started using it, stay tuned. I will be at some point informing you more to basically tell you what we're going to see. Okay, so let me show you. So this is a brand, it's a Miriam shop. So I'm going to go back to their website. It's a different company. And I'm going to show you. This is a much larger producer. So they have, in addition to the CBDA, they have all kinds of products. They do have CBN, for example. It's often indicated for sleep. They also have a regular CBD. They also have a variety of different forms of products. So they have topical tinctures. They also have Rick Simpson oil CBD, which is a highly concentrated form of CBD. Here's the FICO as a Rick Simpson oil extract. So the CBGA is this product. So it's a 750 milligrams per bottle. One important aspect here that I wanted to show you, it's upcoming, it's the capacity in Miriam's hemp to add your own personal terpene blend. Why is it so important? Let's go back to the slides. So the terpenes are molecules that give cannabinoids or cannabis extracts and cannabis plants and hemp its actual smell. The terpenes are key elements of entourage effect. The entourage effect is when you take a main active molecule, let's say CBD, just for example, or THC, and then you add minor constituents and you're enhancing the target effect that you're looking for. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a poor sleep and you're going to use combination of THC and CBN. If you have a calming, relaxing terpenes, such as myrcene and linalool, you will have a boosting effect of the major cannabinoids onto your symptoms. So it's actually going to be more effective. In clinical practice, we try to use entourage effect on every single patient. Unfortunately, when you just go to a regular hemp store online or in face-to-face, it's very unlikely that you're going to have a capacity to have a boosted entourage effect like here, where you can take your CBGA and then decide what kind of terpene blend individually, up to 4 here, or a pre-mixed for you already you're going to add. So here you can have pain, calm, energy, immunity, and focus. Now, of course, this is not necessarily super well validated, but in terms of the basic science, we do understand this terpenes quite well. Give you some examples. So the limonene is very good for cognitive health, for inflammation as an antiseptic, and specifically anti-cancer. Pinene is also very good for cancer and very good for cognition. And carafilene family is excellent for pain and as an anti-inflammatories. And I already mentioned that myrcene and linalool are very good for relaxing, for sleep, and as anti-anxiety terpenes. Okay, so what's this whole rave about, right? You all hear cannabinoids can cure or prevent COVID. Well, slow your horses. The data is very preliminary, but nonetheless, this is the data. So this is very recent. This was published actually just less than a year ago, at the end of 2021, in a very reasonable journal. This is the basic scientific paper showing that if you take the human cells and you mix them with the virus, with different types of COVID viral, different strains, and then you add either CBDA or CBGA, basically at particular concentration, you're completely blocking the entry of the virus into the cell. This is the first substance that we are aware of from the natural world with no known toxicity that has some potential to prevent a viral infection. Now, this is not necessarily to treat it. We don't have the same data to say what happens once the virus is inside. Can you give the CBDA and CBGA and block the progression of spread of the illness? We don't have that data. I do want to show you a couple of graphs here. So what you're seeing is this is the CBDA portion of the study. This is CBGA. And right here, somewhere around 30 to 35 is where you have a sharp neutralization upwards of almost 100%, or close to 100%. So at the low doses, you have 0, of course, as expected. And then at some point, when you start increasing concentration, and at this point, it was 35 microgram per milliliter, then both CBDA and CBGA show complete blocking of the viral entry. What's important is the actual concentration. So what is the microgram per milliliter translates? If you're looking at them, if you multiply it by 1,000, it would mean milligram per liter. And that is relatively realistic concentrations. It means that you can probably reach these concentrations in humans. The problems goes as following. If you take the whole human volume of distribution, which is 42 liters or about 7 liters of blood or plasma, you will have to take upwards of 200 to 300 milligrams of each CBDA and CBGA. That's just too much and unrealistic. But we think that if you can deliver the products closer to the target, basically topically somehow, whether you will put it as a tincture, swish and swallow, or maybe even as a nasal spray, for example, then that potentially that would be way, way more beneficial. And then Dr. Benavides, who's here, and I'll give him the floor in a couple of minutes when we open up for chatting and discussion. And I, with a partnership with Planetary, recently did a small assessment where people who took CBDA had only 12% chance of getting the COVID. Well, that's how they responded. We don't know, right? So the surveys like this prone to all kinds of problems. People can minimize, they may lie to you. But if we take this for what it's worth, that's almost a 5-fold reduction in a risk, which is huge. But of course, it's an uncontrolled study. Also, this was done right before we started doing this assessment at the beginning of Omicron. So is this number really 12%, or is it now double that? Hard to say, but this was already submitted for publication last week, and we will be sharing once we get this into the actual peer-reviewed with evaluation, we will let everybody know. And we're off to Q&A. This is the links. I'm going to leave them on. I'm going to leave I'm going to spotlight myself. Actually, I forgot to spotlight myself. Okay. And let's go to the chat and see who has questions. And we'll go from there. Can you take CBDA and CBGA together every day? Absolutely. Unfortunately, at the moment, I have not, and Abe, unmute yourself and by all means contribute if you want. I have not seen any maker out there making the mix, whether it's 1-to-1 or any other mixes, but I have no doubt that in a couple of months, we're going to see companies started to make mixes of CBDA and CBGA, probably 1-to-1 if people want to use it as a prophylaxis for COVID. Again, what I don't really yet can tell you is what's the dose should you be taking. Unfortunately, in our small assessment, we did not see dose relationship, meaning that people who took more not necessarily seen significantly less COVID, but the sample was small, and in order to get enough volume to get such a difference, you will probably need to have 3 to 4 times more patients in assessment. And we decided not to wait to get more patients because we just want to get this published in real time as soon as we gotten the data together. Okay, right. So any chance we can get a copy of? So everything will be on YouTube, Ben. By all means, you can watch it. And I don't know how I will email you the slides. I just recently made them, but you can get them from YouTube. Okay, and links, what I will do, this last slide with all the links and discount codes and link to my Amazon, to my book, I'll post that in the actual YouTube text so that you can copy paste. Okay, so next is, can you explain how the acid extracts are being formulated? Are they taking fresh flower and leaves to the cold water extraction? Correct. So there are different ways. I believe that the cold water extraction is one method. Honestly, Marisa, I don't think I'm the best person to answer that. I do know that you do often prefer the water extraction because it's much more gentle compared to anything related to the alcohol or even CO2. And acidic forms you can extract using that method, but I don't think I'm the best person to answer that. Abe, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't. I agree with what you said. I think cold water extraction seems likely, but I can't speak exactly to what each producer is doing individually.
All right, and with that, I'll use my opportunity to introduce to everybody Dr. Abraham Benavides. It's especially a pleasure since he was my student some years ago, and now he's working at the GW Center for Integrative Medicine as the Canna coach, and he has a significant experience in this field, and I'll let him say a few words about his consultant to a variety of different industry partners. So maybe highlight just, Abe, some of your recent work.
Sure, yeah, thanks for the brief introduction. So I do worldwide consulting. My biggest clients are Veraheel, which is the #1 prescriber of cannabis cards in the US. So I lead the medical review for their blog posts as well as their medical condition pages. I've also written a couple of ebooks for them on cannabinoids and terpenes, and also their ultimate guide to medical cannabis. I also just wrote a 6-course CME for them that they're planning to get published, and so that was a big project. I also do medical reviewing for Canna Keys. Some of you might be familiar with that. Really great evidence-based website where they have a really nicely organized research database where you can search by condition, terpene, organ system, and then they'll list it all out for you, positive results, negative results, and then I basically help update and overhaul their synopsis. I'm finishing up updating all of their terpene synopses this month. And then a couple of other websites that I've been working with for a while. So I've been doing this for about 2 years, reading literature and advising companies on cannabis science.
And if you want to have a consult with Dr. Benavides, by all means, just contact us. We'll set it up. Now let's move on. We have questions. So Stacy is asking, one of the dispensers told me that terpenes don't work unless it's in the flower form smoked. Well, Stacy, what can I tell you? We have a funny joke that, well, anyway, I'm not going to make that joke because it's a bad joke. But bottom line, it's completely wrong. It's just utterly wrong. The terpenes work, they're highly absorbable. They work by smell, they work through the skin, they work whether you put them in, however you take them in, they're gonna work. So it's completely not true. I'm guessing that dispenser is trying to sell you products to be smoked because that's where they make most of their money. They actually don't make as much money on extracts, believe it or not. The percent income for them profit is highest in the flower, and that's a bummer, but most likely that's exactly what's happening here. Your second question is unfortunately also negative. You're not going to really get that much MCT oil because you may get a couple of drops, maybe a drop or full. In order for the MCT to work for cognition, you need minimum of teaspoon a couple times a day, but realistically, often we do a couple of tablespoons a day. So it's a dose-related issue. In principle, absolutely. So the MCT should theoretically, as a very good metabolic booster and to switch to the fat burning zone, the added MCT should have a value, but not in this case because the doses are minuscule, relatively speaking. It's just seemingly a very good media for non-acidic forms. Acidic forms don't have to be in the oil. Actually, it's a good question. Abe, if you have a sec, can you go to the Miriam's and take a look what they use for the base for their CBGA? For the planetary, they use the water. It's a different infusions. They do have some of it in oil, like topical is in, like I think shea butter is one of the most common ingredient with some others. But I think for the, but MCT is used very heavily for both THC and CBD. And I personally believe it's one of the best carriers because it's highly absorbable. It's usually not allergenic. I don't like people taking alcohol forms. They tend to burn the mouth. They may be the best for preservation, but they're not necessarily best for the intake. They're also not as well absorbed. The oil forms of cannabinoids are best absorbed. And well, actually, probably the best carrier is really simply the hemp oil, the actual oil that's extracted from the plant originally, and then cannabinoids often added or simply the original extraction already carries them with the oil.
Yeah, so in the Miriam's hemp products, they're using organic cold pressed olive oil. I think that they probably benefit from buying the olive oil in bulk. And the cold pressing is good because you want to preserve all the terpenes and the cannabinoids in there.
Exactly. And so the olive oil is also very common, also very good for the same exact reason. And usually the high quality MCT cold pressed oil or cold extraction is also very good. MCT oil, for those who don't know, it's actually a coconut oil extraction, but it's made in a certain way to remove some of the saturated fat. So it's actually safer for those people who have a very high cholesterol or who don't want to have a coconut, taking a lot of coconut oil because it can increase cholesterol. There's good data on that. Okay, can you say more about using CBGA for its neuroprotective properties, or is it too early? Let me say what I do know, what I've read. I don't think there's enough clinical data, but it appears that similar to the CBG and to the CBDA and to the CBD, all of these four molecules appear to have a very strong signal of neuroprotection in different cells and in small animals, specifically mice. When certain concentrations of these molecules are given, the effects are pretty profound. We're talking about a reversal of neurocognitive impairment completely. We're talking about nearly complete elimination of the stroke-like syndromes when it's induced in small animals. Now, unfortunately, we know quite well that taking that data and translating it from small animals to humans is not a simple task. And most of the time, unfortunately, this doesn't pan out. You end up not having the benefit you're observing in small animals. Why that is the case, hard to say. Reality is probably what we need to get into the human dose-wise and concentration-wise is way, way, way higher than what we need to achieve in mice. That's probably one of the key reasons, but probably not the only reason. But the potential, what is observed, seems to be probably I would not be afraid of saying the most profound benefit we can possibly derive on any other substance currently available on the market. Now, will that translate to the clinical? We yet to see. I'm actually trying to design a formula for at least Alzheimer's disease right now. Again, unfortunately, in this field, it just takes a lot of time to figure out what's working and what's not. Some of these conditions, they're very slowly arriving, they're very slowly progressing. It's really hard to do the research when you have to give someone product for a year or two, or at least 6 months, and see what happens. So I don't expect we're going to see the data soon. Of course, everybody knows that CBD is now used increasingly for seizure disorder, and that's the only currently hemp extract, or actually any cannabis extract in US that is FDA approved. The actual THC CBD mix 1:1, which is called Sativex, it's not yet available in the US. It's only available in parts of the Europe. So, all right. Any other questions? And there's nothing wrong by ending a little bit sooner. I know it's late, and I hope everybody got what they came here for. Again, what I'll do is I will put, oh, yes. So by all means, if you have a question and you cannot type for whatever reason you want to ask it, go ahead and unmute yourself after you put the hand. So I see that somebody is having hand up. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, I'm wondering if this is helpful for neuropathies or nerve damage.
That's what we think. So it probably will not help you immediately with the pain. For the neuropathy, for the pain, I would use THC and start with a slow dose. But we do believe that adding CBD, CBGA, and CBDA is probably really important, more for a neuroprotective effect down the road, and possibly even potentially reversing it altogether. I will tell you that I had several of my patients just doing 1:1 THC to CBD and not just seeing less pain, but having their condition resolve over time. But it took years. It's not a as I said, all chronic neurologic conditions, unfortunately, takes a lot of time to treat. So you sometimes have to be very patient and waiting for the result, versus some of the medications, for example, gabapentin, they may cover the pain very quickly, but then they won't have any chances of actually improving the underlying driver of what happened, or just curing the condition in the first place.
Thank you.
Stacy, so for the MS, MS is kind of a different animal, I would say, compared to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, but it's a very good point. So MS, we do know that THC, whether it's synthetic, such as dronabinol or marinol, which is a medication, or whole or plant extract, seem to work really well for spasticity. And that's actually nearly universally accepted. I wouldn't say it's FDA approved for that reason. Dronabinol is not FDA approved for spasticity, but I would say, given on the 2017 National Academies of Sciences report, THC for MS spasticity seems to be clearly effective. I will tell you that in my experience, a number of my patients with MS had profound benefit from CBD. So when they take CBD, they tend to have a variety of MS associated symptoms improve. Will that translate to CBGA? I don't know. I will leave it at that. I see that Maria has hand. Maria, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Dr. Kogan, first of all, thank you so much for organizing this sessions. And as you know, I am a patient on CBD and CBG. Is it possible to ever get allergic to any of them or both of them? I am also taking the FICA.
So you're asking if you can get addicted to the to all of this molecules?
Allergic.
Allergic. Okay, great question. Thank you so much. I'm gonna mute you. So yes, the reality, unfortunately, is yes, people can get allergic to any cannabinoids, and probably the reality is it's more likely you're getting allergic to the actual hemp itself. I have seen this several times now. It's very uncommon relatively to many other treatments, but it's definitely can happen. Unfortunately, my experience has been when a person gets allergic to one cannabinoid, they just get allergic to everything, meaning they just get allergic to the actual extracts. Actually, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself for a second and maybe share your own experience. Maria, sorry, I muted you. Can you unmute yourself again? We can't hear you. You're muted.
I unmute. Can you
There
hear now?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. I have a reason to believe that I may be getting allergic to one of these products.
But not to the others, only to one?
No, I am also going to ask you about medical marijuana. Is it okay to stop for a while CBD products and go back to medical marijuana to just easen up the pain?
Yeah,
syndrome?
absolutely. So the THC, once you found the effective dose of THC, I probably would minimize variability. But even the THC can stop and restart. There is no concern about if you're not taking too much for your system, withdrawal is not going to happen. And it may actually be that when you're discontinuing THC for a period of time and restarting, on occasion, we actually see a better impact, better effect when you restart. Unfortunately, it's very possible that when you stop the THC, your pain is simply going to get worse if you're taking it for, or not just pain, but whatever the symptom you like, maybe a sleep, for example. So.
Well, in my condition, which is incurable, unfortunately, I have to tell you, I am so grateful for your presence in my life because I have become severely disabled, allergic, and therefore disabled by the prescriptive pain management remedies. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for your presence in my life and in our lives. Thank you, and keep up the good work.
Will do.
And all of you, thank you. Thank you for your hard work.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, this is very common. So we do see a lot of our patients get off of medications because they find that cannabinoids is simply just bluntly more effective and less side effect prone. So can you travel with the CBD products in US and overseas? Okay, you guys asking great questions today. So inside the US, I would have zero hesitation going with any CBD products. And I shouldn't say that, this has been recorded, but the reality is that if you're a medical cannabis patient and you're traveling with your own products between the states, yes, it's a violation of federal law, but I will tell you, I'm yet to see a single story outside some craziness where somebody going to get in significant trouble. Unfortunately, the only people who get into trouble are minorities. And Abraham can tell us his whole story there. And we have seen stories of African Americans getting arrested. But, you know, so there's still a very significant problem with discrimination and racism around this topic. But the reality is, you know, cops, generally speaking, should be ignoring this, and for most part they do. So outside of the crazy stories like this is not, or happening a lot less. Now with CBD, it shouldn't even happen because CBD is legally sold in all the states and shipped across the lines in many states. Now overseas is a whole different conversation. I will tell you where you should absolutely never take any cannabinoid products under any circumstances. Well, you all heard about Russia right now, right? So we had our own Olympic champion getting arrested for carrying cartridge for medical use, right? No Arab countries, because there's a zero tolerance and you actually can end up in jail for a very long time. Other than that, like most of the parts of the Europe, you're most likely completely safe. But if you're unsure, you can do a couple of things. You can go and check if the particular country you're going to has a medical cannabis law. If they're already using medical cannabis, most likely you're going to be very safe. If not, better don't risk. And thanks so much for Dr. Benavides. He just posted in the chat to read his whole article about this, about racial discrimination. Abe, do you have an article about travel? That's next topic.
Well, I've reviewed articles about traveling with it. I can probably send that after if people are interested.
And we have a little bit of we have in our book, in my book, we have in one of the last chapters, we have a whole section on travel, sort of what to do and what not to do. Anecdotally, I would say don't travel with flour. It's just too obvious. But if you have an extract, if you have an oil in a standard oil bottle, you can remove the label. I didn't say that. And chances are nobody's going to open your bottle. You know, how are they going to know it's a THC or CBD? So, and thanks so much, Abram, for posting about this. I highly recommend everybody to read this. Abraham had his own story related to this that's complex, and he's still healing from it. And maybe one day he'll write a book about it. And as a good writer he is, he should. So
very well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for fun facts. So some of the terpenes, particularly carophyllene oxide, is the compound that drugs sniffing dogs look for in cannabis. Now, in US, we don't really think that dogs at this point really trained for cannabis. They primarily trained for explosives and harder drugs, but nonetheless. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions. Let me pose a question to everybody. What else would you want to hear? I'm thinking of starting to do this on a more or less regular basis, probably going to bring different guests. The Dr. Benavides probably will be also involved in some of these talks, and then some of the other staff from the clinic. So just drop in the chat what else you want to hear, and I'll read what you post, and we'll kind of look at this, compile the answers, and at some point make a decision. And probably we'll try to do this on at least monthly basis. I see a hand up, Patricia.
Hi, yes, I wanted
Hi.
to, hi, I just wanted to second agree with presenting it on a regular basis and letting more people know. I don't know what mailing list you used for tonight's presentation, but if you can get a greater audience, that would be great. I think this information is really important. And then my other question is how to get an appointment to talk about it.
Sure.
I'll
put the best way just to go to our website, gwcim.com. I just posted it there. You can look at everything, all the details, the pricing, and everything.
All right. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm on this call on a phone for the very first time, so I'm not I'm not adept at figuring out where stuff is.
Okay. If you have pen and paper, I'll give you a phone number.
Yep, I'm ready.
202-833-5055.
Okay, super.
And again, for everybody who's listening, we will be posting this on my YouTube channel, and I'll probably gonna have we're gonna send you a follow-up email with the link, so that everything that's discussed, I think we may even consider trying to post the chat there, although I'm not sure it's actually worth it. I do want to point out that Dan put a couple of really good points. Sourcing. I can't agree more. There is a ton of junk out there. Unfortunately, there's tons of junk. There's a lot of CBD products that have no CBD in them whatsoever. So if you, and by the way, by no means am I saying that there's no other good brands. This is just the ones I'm using. I'm using some other ones. It's just the two that I brought up that I can trust with the CBDA and CBGA. In the future, when we cover other things, I will talk about some of the other brands I use. I tend to think that the boutique, small organic growers that are growing their own product, extracting their own product, and then selling it at best, or at the very minimum that the company that extracts and sells has a partnership with one or several farmers. I tend to be very concerned where this behemoth company is buying whole kinds of different things, mixing them up. And, you know, sometimes the end result product is not often gets double checked, triple checked, and the quality of the end product may be questionable. It's very a big concern, to be honest with you, about all this. So Ben, thanks so much for putting that out. Definitely spend time researching. You can always ask the brand you're using to give you a third-party test results. You can't rely on that result 100%, but that's the best currently we have. Problems with some of these tests, the tests are a problem too. They're often quite inaccurate. And so there's some concerns left and right. But, you know, the industry is maturing, it's changing. I think it's getting better. There are a lot of bad players, but there are also good players. And so I think that over time, we're going to see more better players than bad players. So, all right. Anything else? All right. Oh, let me see who wanted to, what in terms of follow-ups. I'd love to hear more specific about which products do the best for variety. Okay, so that's a great topic. So Blair, I think we could do that next. So we can take, let's say maybe, how about this? We take 10 most common conditions, and then we'll, for which cannabis can, or cannabinoids can be effective, and we kind of organize it that way. Instead of starting with cannabinoids and then talking about what it's good for, we'll talk about what's good for a particular condition. It's a great idea. Okay. All right. Well, I guess next time we'll ask again what else we want to hear. So have a wonderful evening. If you have any other questions or concerns, so Dr. Benavides put his email. I'm going to go ahead and put my email in there too. By all means, please shoot us an email. If you're too shy to put something in here or ask something, go ahead and send it to us. Okay, bye everybody.